You're just a cripple, Lily. Did you really think you could compete with Jessica? The moment before the car crash, my husband's cold sneer was still ringing in my ears. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn, back in my senior year of high school. On the rainy day, I delivered a love letter for him, ruining my entire life. This time, I tore up the letter he'd written to the school bell in front of everyone. Mark, I said, we're done. I was dead. That was my first thought as consciousness returned. The piercing wail of an ambulance siren filled my ears. My vision was filled with the twisted metal of the car's roof, and the warm liquid trickling down from my forehead, blurring my sight. Lily, you're like a ghost I can't shake. Mark's voice came from the driver's seat, laced with his familiar disgust, making trouble for me even on the way to our divorce. I tried to talk back, but no sound came out. My body felt pinned down by a 1,000-pound weight. The sound of rain, the siren, and the shocked cries of passers-by all mixed together and began to fade. If you hadn't gotten involved back then, getting into a car crash delivering some stupid love letter, why would I have been forced to marry a cripple like you? Do you have any idea how my friends have laughed at me all these years? His voice grew more distant. But now it's all over. You're dead, and I can finally be with Jessica out in the open. To be honest, Jessica and I are already married. We got our license overseas. Darkness swallowed my consciousness. I thought that was the end, but when I opened my eyes again, sunlight was streaming through the classroom window, casting dappled shadows on my desk. I blinked, my eyes focusing on the open math test in front of me, a practice exam for senior year. Lily, do me a favor, will you? A pink, heart-shaped letter was pushed toward me, accompanied by a familiar voice. You have to get this to Jessica for me today. I snapped my head up and saw the face I never wanted to see again, the 18-year-old Mark. My childhood friend, and the man who had ruined my life. He was looking at me with that same charming smile I could never refuse, just like he had every time he'd asked me for a favor for the past decade. The word stuck in my throat, my fingers trembling uncontrollably. What's wrong? He tilted his head, his face youthful and bright in the sunlight. It's just a love letter. It's not the first time. I'll buy you a soda tomorrow. The memories flooded back like a tidal wave. It was this letter, this exact day. In my past life, I delivered the letter for him. On the way back, I was in a car accident, had my right leg amputated, missed the SATs, and lost my chance to become a doctor. The Liu family, out of guilt, forced Mark to marry me, which ended up destroying both of our lives. Lily, what are you spacing out for? Mark waved a hand in front of my face. School's almost out. You can head over in a bit. At the front of the room, the math teacher was explaining the last problem on the board. The air was thick with the humid heat of early summer, and the tension of the looming college entrance exams. I looked around at the familiar yet strange faces. This was my senior year classroom. I had actually come back 10 years into the past. No, I heard myself say, my voice unervingly calm. You can deliver it yourself. Mark froze, clearly not expecting me to refuse. Come on, don't mess around. You know how strict our homeroom teacher is. I'll be toast if I get caught. You're a good student. All the teachers love you. You won't get in trouble even if they see you. I picked up the love letter and, under his expectant gaze, tore it in half, then into quarters, and finally crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the trash can at the back of the classroom. Lily, are you insane? Mark's face changed, his loud voice drawing stares from our classmates. I'm perfectly sane. I looked him straight in the eye, the anger and grief from my past life churning inside me. I remembered all the times he'd mocked me for being a cripple in front of his friends, how he'd left me again and again to fly abroad to see his first love, even getting married overseas, and how he'd insulted my parents and my family. Mark, from this day on, we're done. Your crap is your own problem to solve. The bell rang right on cue. I quickly packed my bag, ignored his stunned expression, and rushed out of the classroom without a second glance. The sun felt warm and real on my face. I took a deep breath, feeling the healthy, powerful stride of my legs. This wasn't a dream. I was really reborn, back on the day that changed my destiny. This time, I would not make the same mistake. The moment I pushed open the door to my house, my eyes welled up. Lily, you're home? Mom poked her head out of the kitchen, her face still free of the wrinkles that worrying about me would later carve into it. "Dinner's almost ready. Go wash your hands." I stood there, greedily taking in the familiar yet strange sight of my home. The calendar on the living room wall read March 12, 2015. Mom's favorite light blue curtains swayed gently in the breeze, and a plate of fresh fruit sat on the dining table. Every detail was so vivid. In my past life, after my amputation, my parents nearly bankrupted themselves to pay for my medical treatments. My mother's hair turned white overnight, and my father's back became permanently stooped. And now, here they were, healthy and whole in front of me, as if heaven had given me a second chance. "What's wrong? Just standing there in a daze?" Mom walked over, wiping her hands, and touched my forehead. "Are you not feeling well?" I threw my arms around her, burying my face in her shoulder, breathing in that familiar scent of cooking oil and laundry detergent. "It's nothing. I just missed you guys." "Silly girl, you just left this morning and you already miss me?" Mom laughed and patted my back. "Go wash up. I made your favorite sweet and sour ribs today." At dinner, I devoured every dish my mom made, so much so that even my dad was surprised by my appetite. After the meal, I cleared the table myself and then, to my parents' surprise, announced, "From now on, I'm going to focus completely on preparing for the SATs. I might not have as much time for chores." "Look at you, finally getting serious," Dad said with a smile, pushing up his glasses. "All right, your mom and I will handle the housework. You just focus on your studies." Back in my room, I locked the door, dove onto my bed, and buried my face in my pillow, letting out a few silent screams before I finally calmed down. I was really back in the most critical month, before the exams. I sat up and pulled all my textbooks and notes from my backpack, spreading them across my desk. Since fate had given me another shot, I was determined to seize it, get into the Capital University's med school program I'd always dreamed of, and become a doctor. I opened my math notebook and froze. The formulas and problem-solving methods that were once second nature to me now looked vaguely unfamiliar. I then opened my physics and chemistry textbooks, and the situation was even worse. Years of a miserable marriage, and the low self-esteem that came with my disability, had made me forget most of my high school knowledge. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead as my fingers trembled slightly. Rebirth gave me a healthy body and a second chance, but it didn't give me back the knowledge I once had. And the SATs were less than 3 months away. I took a deep breath, grabbed a new notebook, and started creating a study plan. In my past life, the car accident made me miss the exams. I ended up getting a degree in a subject I hated from an ordinary university, through online courses. This time, I would get into the best medical school with the best possible scores. At 2 in the morning, I finally finished a detailed study schedule, planned down to the hour for each day. My eyelids felt heavy as lead, but I forced myself to open my math book and start reviewing from the most basic concepts, like trigonometric functions. "Lily, why are you still up?" Mom knocked softly on my door. "I'm going to bed soon," I called out, but I insisted on finishing the problem I was working on before turning off the lamp. Lying in bed, I thought about what happened at school. The shocked look on Mark's face came to mind, and a small thrill of revenge washed over me. In my past life, I would have done anything he asked. I even ruined my own life to deliver a love letter for him. And after we were married, he took all his resentment out on me. "This time, I'm not having anything to do with you," I whispered into the darkness before falling into a deep sleep. The next morning, I arrived at school half an hour earlier than usual. The early morning sun slanted through the windows onto the empty desks. I took out my English vocabulary book and started memorizing. As my classmates trickled in, they all looked surprised to see me there so early. When Mark walked in, I didn't even look up, focusing on a physics problem. "Lily." He stood in front of my desk, his voice laced with annoyance. "Aren't you going to explain what happened yesterday?" I kept writing down formulas, not even giving him a glance. "There's nothing to explain. What is wrong with you?" He slammed his hand down on my notebook. "This is how it's always been. You help me with stuff, and I buy you ice cream." I looked up at him. The face that had once made my heart race now only filled me with disgust. That was before. Now I have to study for my exams. I don't have time to play your stupid games. The exams? He scoffed. With your grades, you could get into a good college without even trying. What are you so nervous about? I yanked my notebook back. What I do is none of your business. Mark's face turned ugly. Just as he was about to say something else, our homeroom teacher, Ms. Lee, walked in. He had no choice but to retreat to his seat, fuming. Throughout the morning classes, I could feel Mark constantly looking back at me, but I never met his gaze. During breaks, I crammed in as much review as I could, even holding off on going to the bathroom, afraid to waste a single second. When the final bell rang, I quickly packed my bag to leave. Mark rushed over to block my path. Let's walk home together. No thanks. I'm going to the library, I said, trying to get around him. He grabbed my wrist. What is wrong with you? Why are you suddenly so cold to me? Aren't we best friends? I shook his hand off, my voice rising. I told you I need to study. Please stop bothering me. The few students still in the classroom turned to look, their whispers filling the air. Mark's face turned beet red, a flash of anger in his eyes. Lily, have you lost your mind? Think whatever you want. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and strode out of the classroom, my heart pounding in my chest. In my past life, I was always so careful around him, terrified of making him upset. Now I could finally justifiably say no. The library was so quiet you could hear pages turning. I found a spot in a corner, spread out my books, and began to study. But it wasn't long before someone sat down across from me. I thought it was Mark, back to pester me, and looked up impatiently. Leo, I said, surprised to see the boy in front of me. He was the academic monitor of our class, a top student who had never ranked outside the top 3 in our grade. He was usually quiet and kept to himself. He pushed up his black framed glasses and handed me a notebook, his expression blank. Ms. Lee asked me to give this to you. Confused, I took it and opened it. Inside were neat, detailed biology notes covering all the major exam topics, and even some extra material. This is my notes, Leo said curtly. Ms. Lee said you want to go to med school. I looked at him, stunned. How did Ms. Lee know? I had just written that down on my career planning form this morning. Leo shrugged and was already looking down at his own work, clearly not intending to continue the conversation. I carefully flipped through the notes. The content was more systematic and easier to understand than the textbook, with key points and difficult concepts highlighted in different colors. Thank you. And please thank Ms. Lee for me. Leo nodded without another word. We studied in silence like that until the library's closing bell rang. For the next few days, Mark tried all sorts of things to get my attention. He left my favorite boba tea on my desk, though I didn't even like that flavor anymore, deliberately laughed and joked loudly with his friends on my way home from school, and even had our mutual friends ask me why I'd had a sudden change of heart. I ignored it all, completely immersed in my studies. During the day, I paid close attention in every class, chasing down teachers with questions during breaks. After school, I went straight to the library. At home, I'd study until the early hours of the morning, pinching my thigh to stay awake when I got tired. During biology class on Friday, the teacher announced a short quiz for the following week. After class, I saw Leo organizing his notes and worked up the courage to approach him. Leo, could I possibly borrow your biology notes? Just for the section on next week's quiz, I asked, my voice getting quieter as I spoke. In my past life, I never asked anyone for help with schoolwork, but this was a special situation. He looked up at me, then pulled a folder from his bag and handed it to me. The latest version is in here. Thank you. I'll definitely give it back on Monday, I said, taking it like it was a priceless treasure. No rush, he said, then paused. Your study method has a problem. I froze. What problem? You're rushing too much, Leo said calmly. The SATs aren't something you can cram for overnight. Staying up late like this is just making you less efficient. My face flushed. How did he know I was staying up late? Were my dark circles that obvious? I just have a lot to catch up on, I said quietly. Leo looked at me for a moment, then suddenly said, Saturday, 8 a.m., 3rd floor of the city library. I have compiled notes on the key topics for all subjects. I looked up in surprise, unable to believe my ears. Was Leo asking me to study with him? Come or not, it's up to you, he said, already turning to leave, leaving me standing there, clutching the biology notes, my heart beating strangely fast. This was a godsend. As expected, Mark was waiting for me at the school gate after class. This time, I pretended not to see him and walked straight to the bus stop. Lily, he yelled, chasing after me. What is wrong with you? You've been like a different person this whole week. I've told you a dozen times I need to study, I said, trying to walk past him. Cut the act, he said, raising his voice. Are you into someone else? It's Leo, isn't it? You've been hanging around him all week. I stopped and turned to face him. Mark, we are not dating, and I have no obligation to explain myself to you. Who I hang out with is my own business. His expression was like he'd been slapped. We grew up together. How can you treat me like this? It's because I've known you for so long that I know exactly what kind of person you are, I said calmly. Please stop bothering me. I need to study. With that, I got on the bus that had just arrived, leaving Mark standing there, looking utterly bewildered. Through the bus window, I saw his expression shift from shock to anger, and finally to a kind of confusion I'd never seen on his face before. In my past life, his every mood swing would have made me anxious. Now, I just felt a sense of relief. As the bus pulled away, I took a deep breath, opened Leo's notes, and quickly lost myself in a sea of knowledge. This time, I wouldn't give up my future for anyone. On Saturday morning at 7:40, I stood in front of the city library, nervously twisting the strap of my backpack. I was 20 minutes early, but I had barely slept the night before, my mind buzzing with formulas and theorems. When the large clock in front of the library pointed to 7:50, I saw a familiar figure get off the bus. Leo was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans. In the sunlight, his skin looked exceptionally fair, and his eyes behind the black-framed glasses widened slightly when he saw me. Morning, he said, walking up to me with a brief greeting. Gee, good morning, I stammered. I was just in the neighborhood, so I got here a little early. Leo nodded, not calling out my lie. His house was in the complete opposite direction from mine. The library's air conditioning was blasting. I followed Leo up to the third floor, and we sat down at a table by the window. He pulled a thick, neatly bound stack of papers from his backpack and pushed it toward me. These are the key concepts and common question types for all the exam subjects that I've compiled, he said in a low voice, as if afraid to disturb the other readers. You can look through them first. If you have any questions, just ask. I opened the first page. It was filled with dense yet orderly summaries of all the key points in math. Important formulas were marked in red, common mistakes were highlighted in yellow, and there were small pencil annotations on the side. This was better than any review book on the market. This is so detailed, I said, looking up in genuine awe. How long did it take you to put all this together? Leo looked down at his own book, but the tips of his ears turned slightly red. Not long. For the next 3 hours, we were lost in our own studies. Whenever I came across something I didn't understand, I would gently tap the page, and Leo would pause, explaining it in a voice only we could hear until I fully understood. Around noon, my stomach rumbled embarrassingly. Leo looked up at me, then pulled 2 rice balls and a bottle of water from his bag. Here, he said, pushing one toward me. It's from the cafeteria. The taste is so-so, but it'll fill you up. I was stunned. You prepared this beforehand? Yeah, Leo said, already unwrapping his and taking a bite. Figured you'd get hungry. I held the warm rice ball, a wave of warmth spreading through my chest. In my past life, I barely remembered Leo, other than that he was a lone wolf who got good grades. It seemed that beneath that cool exterior was an unexpected thoughtfulness. Thanks, I said softly, taking a bite. The aroma of seaweed filled my mouth. It's actually really good. The corners of Leo's mouth lifted slightly. It might not have been a full smile, but it was enough to brighten his entire face. We continued studying in the afternoon, and when the library's closing music played, I was shocked to realize a whole day had passed. My notebook was filled with new problem-solving techniques and key concepts. My head was a little fuzzy from absorbing so much information, but I felt incredibly fulfilled. Next Saturday, you coming? Leo asked suddenly as we packed our bags. I looked up and met his eyes. The eyes behind his glasses were clear and calm, without a hint of joking. Yes, I answered without hesitation. 8 o'clock, same spot, he said, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. Remember to bring a water bottle. They have hot water here. I nodded, watching him walk away, a smile unconsciously forming on my lips. On my first weekend after being reborn, I had somehow become study partners with Leo. When I got to school on Monday, I was more focused than ever. With Leo's notes and explanations, the concepts that were once a blur became crystal clear. I no longer chatted with classmates during breaks, instead using the time to review the last lesson or prepare for the next. On Wednesday afternoon, during our free activity gym class, most students were playing basketball or chatting under the trees. I, however, snuck back to the classroom, pulled out my physics workbook, and started grinding through problems. Knew I'd find you here, a voice said from the doorway. I looked up to see the class president, Sarah, leaning against the doorframe, twirling a set of keys. The gym rep sent me to get a spare whistle, she said, walking in and curiously glancing at my workbook. Working this hard? That's not like you. I smiled but didn't answer. In my past life, Sarah and I weren't close. She was the cheerful, popular type with lots of friends, while I only ever orbited around Mark. You know, Mark's been asking about you these past few days, Sarah said casually, pulling a whistle from the teacher's desk drawer. He really doesn't seem to get why you're suddenly ignoring him. I put down my pen and sighed. I just want to focus on my studies. That's all. Oh please, Sarah said, suddenly leaning in close and lowering her voice. The whole class can see there's something going on between you and Leo. Someone saw you two studying together at the library last Saturday. That's headline news in our class. My face instantly grew hot. We were just reviewing together. Leo never studies with anyone, Sarah said meaningfully. Last year, Tina Lou, who was second in our grade, tried to ask him for help, and he just handed her a reference book and sent her away. I didn't know how to respond, so I just looked down and continued with my problems. Sarah didn't press the issue, blew her whistle softly, and left the classroom. After school, just as I was leaving the main gate, I heard someone call my name from behind. I turned to see Mark running toward me, his basketball uniform soaked with sweat, clearly having just finished a game. Lily, wait up, he said, panting as he blocked my way. Our class has a basketball game against Class 7 this Saturday. You're coming to watch, right? I frowned. I told you, I have to study. Just for an hour. Mark pleaded, putting his hands together. You know how important this game is. Those guys from Class 7 have always looked down on us. This time. Mark, I interrupted him. I really don't have time. His expression fell. Ever since Leo showed up, you've completely changed. What's so great about him? He walks around with a sour face all day and doesn't talk. He's just a bookworm. Don't you talk about him like that. My voice suddenly rose, attracting glances from passing students. Leo is 100 times better than you. At least he knows how to work for his own future instead of spending all day trying to impress Jessica. Mark's face went white. How do you know about Jessica? I realized I'd slipped up. In my past life, I only learned about Jessica because I was delivering the love letter for him. In this life, I shouldn't have known who she was. I heard some classmates talking, I said, quickly covering my tracks. Anyway, I'm not going on Saturday. Find someone else to cheer for you. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. Behind me, Mark called my name a few times, but I didn't look back. On Saturday morning, Leo and I were studying at the library as planned. During our lunch break, I couldn't help but check my phone and saw that our class group chat was flooded with pictures from the basketball game. There were striking photos of Mark looking impressive on the court, with Jessica and a few other girls cheering enthusiastically on the sidelines. Distracted, Leo said suddenly. I quickly locked my phone screen. Sorry. He pushed a piece of scratch paper toward me. On it was a complex physics problem. Try this. I recognized it as the final, most difficult question from last year's national exams. Taking a deep breath, I focused my mind and started solving it. When I finally found the breakthrough, I let out a small, excited cheer and looked up to meet Leo's approving gaze. That sense of accomplishment was more wonderful than any cheer at a basketball game. Around 4 in the afternoon, My phone suddenly buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. Mark got injured during the game. He's in the school nurse's office and keeps asking to see you. I stared at the message for a long time, memories of my past life flooding back. Whenever Mark was sick or hurt, I was always the first one by his side. I remember in our sophomore year when he had a high fever, I skipped class to take care of him at his house all day, even helping him copy all his homework. But after we were married, when my leg was in excruciating pain, he hung up on me because he had to go shopping with Jessica. Something wrong? Leo noticed my strange expression. I showed him the text and gave a bitter smile. The old me would have rushed over there immediately. He thought for a moment, then suddenly asked, "And the current you? Do you want to go?" "No," I answered decisively. "He has plenty of friends, he doesn't need me. Besides," I pointed to the thick stack of review materials in front of me, "we have more important things to do." The corners of Leo's mouth lifted slightly. He handed me a biology notebook. "Let's continue." When I got home that evening, the class group chat was still buzzing about the game. From my classmates' conversations, I pieced together what happened. Mark had twisted his ankle during the game. Jessica reluctantly helped him to the nurse's office but quickly made an excuse and left, leaving him alone. I heard he was in low spirits, constantly asking why no one was with him. I closed the group chat without making any comment. The old me would have been heartbroken and immediately called to comfort him. Now, I just felt it was a kind of karma. Let him have a taste of what it feels like to have no one care. On Monday at school, Mark's ankle was still wrapped in a bandage. I deliberately avoided his gaze and walked straight to my seat. During breaks, I noticed him trying to talk to me several times, but I managed to avoid him by pretending not to see. At lunch in the cafeteria, I was busy eating when a tray was suddenly placed across from me. I looked up to see Leo sitting there with a deadpan expression. I was so surprised I almost choked. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, even though there were plenty of empty tables around us. "No, no one's here." I quickly shook my head. We ate our meals in silence. It wasn't awkward. Occasionally, our eyes would meet, and he would give a slight nod before continuing to eat. This simple, natural way of being together felt strangely comforting. Well, since when does our ice prince genius eat with other people?" A teasing voice came from behind. I turned to see Jessica and her two best friends standing there, a smirk on their faces that I couldn't quite decipher. Jessica was undeniably beautiful, with big eyes, a small face, and long, smooth black hair. She was the dream girl for many boys at school. "What's it to you?" I said coldly, surprised by my own directness. In my past life, I always felt inferior around Jessica and wouldn't even dare to speak. Jessica was clearly taken aback by my response. After a moment, she forced a smile. "Lily, I hear you've been studying really hard lately. Trying to beat our Leo? Your Leo?" I raised an eyebrow, noticing that Leo's brow had also furrowed. "Oh, just a slip of the tongue," Jessica said, flipping her hair. "By the way, Mark asked me to tell you he wants to talk. He'll be waiting for you behind the gym after school." "I'm busy," I refused flatly. Jessica pouted. "Suit yourself." "But he's in a pretty pathetic state right now. His foot's injured, no one's taking care of him, and he doesn't even have anyone to copy homework from." "Then you go take care of him," I said, putting down my chopsticks. Jessica snorted contemptuously. "I don't have time for him. If I didn't feel sorry for him, I wouldn't have even bothered to pass on the message." With that, she and her friends sauntered away. I turned to look at Leo and found him staring at me with a complex expression. "What is it?" I asked, feeling a bit uneasy. "Nothing," he said, pushing up his glasses. "I just realized you're not like the rumors say." "What do the rumors say I'm like?" I asked curiously. Leo thought for a moment. "Quiet, introverted, always following Mark around like his little shadow." The description stung. It was true of my past life. I had made Mark the center of my universe and completely lost myself. "People change," I said softly. Leo nodded, then suddenly pulled a piece of paper from his bag and handed it to me. "The topics for next week's mock exam. I've highlighted the key points." I took the paper, a wave of warmth washing over me. After my rebirth, it seemed I had found someone who truly respected me, not someone who treated me like a convenient tool. but someone willing to walk alongside me. After school, I deliberately took the long way around to avoid the gym, but a limping Mark managed to block my path at the school gate. "Why didn't you come?" he demanded, his eyes bloodshot. "I waited for you for an hour." "I told you I was busy," I said, trying to get past him. He grabbed my wrist. "Is it because of Leo? You like him, don't you? Let go." I struggled to break free. "Who I like is none of your business." "How is it none of my business?" Mark's voice held a tremor I'd never heard before. "We grew up together. I thought we." "You thought what?" I laughed coldly. "That I'd follow you around forever, at your beck and call? Help you with your homework, deliver your love letters, and do anything for you?" He froze, his hand instinctively loosening its grip. I didn't mean it like that." "Mark," I said, taking a deep breath. "From now on, please take responsibility for your own life. I'm not wasting another minute on you." With that, I turned and left, leaving him standing alone at the school gate. The setting sun stretched his shadow long and lonely. But I didn't look back. The week before the third round of mock exams, my nerves were stretched as taut as a bowstring. I was sleeping only 4 hours a night. The rest of my time, aside from eating and commuting, was spent studying. I could finish half a set of multiple choice questions in a 10-minute break, spent my lunch hours hiding in a corner of the library memorizing English essays, and even listened to recordings of key concepts I'd made while walking. On Wednesday night, as I wrestled with a difficult physics problem at my desk, the letters and numbers in front of me suddenly began to twist and blur. I blinked hard and my vision refocused, only to blur again less than a minute later. My temples throbbed as if someone were drumming inside my head. "Lily, have some milk." Mom pushed the door open, placing a warm glass of milk by my hand and looking at me with concern. "You look terrible." "Thanks, Mom, I'm fine." I forced a smile, took the glass and sipped the milk. The warm liquid soothed my throat, offering a moment of relief. Mom reached out and felt my forehead. "You've been studying all day. Take a break." "I can't," I shook my head. "The mock exams are next week." "I have to." My words caught in my throat. The milk glass in front of me suddenly split into two. My hand began to tremble uncontrollably, and the glass slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor with a loud crack, splashing milk everywhere. "Lily!" Mom cried out, quickly squatting down to check if I was hurt. I wanted to say I was fine, but the moment I opened my mouth, tears streamed out without warning. One drop was followed by another, and soon I was sobbing like a lost child, all the pressure and fear I'd been holding back bursting out like a dam breaking. "I can't remember it all, so many formulas, so many facts," I choked out between sobs, my vision blurred by tears. "I'm scared, scared I'll do badly, scared I'll repeat the same mistakes." Mom pulled me into her arms, gently patting my back. "Silly girl, it's just one exam. Just do your best. Don't put so much pressure on yourself." I cried on her shoulder for a long time, until the tears ran dry and only occasional sobs remained. Mom cleaned up the mess on the floor, and insisted I take a hot bath and go to bed early. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling as my emotions slowly settled. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text from Leo. "Don't come too early tomorrow morning. The library doesn't open until 8. I stared at the seemingly ordinary message for a long time, then suddenly understood. He must have noticed I wasn't doing well, and was telling me to get more sleep. I texted back a simple okay, then buried my face in my pillow, a smile spreading across my lips. The next day, I slept for 2 extra hours and felt significantly better. When I got to the classroom, Leo was already at his desk, reading. I put down my backpack and, after a moment's hesitation, walked over to his desk. "Thank you," I said softly. He looked up at me, nodded, and then pulled a folded piece of paper from his drawer and handed it to me. "Take a look at this." I opened it. It was a single math problem, but with multiple ways to solve it. Each method was written out in extreme detail, with notes on the side explaining which approach was best for which situation. "If you get nervous during the exam, stick with the method you know best. Don't try anything new," he said without looking at me, his voice calm, but his words made my nose tingle. "Okay," I said, clutching the paper tightly. "I will." The day of the mock exams was oppressively hot. Sitting in the exam hall, My palms were sweating so much I had to keep wiping them with a tissue. The moment the test papers were handed out, I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. The first subject was language arts, my strong suit. The essay prompt was choice. I wrote the entire piece drawing from the memories and realizations of my past life, the tip of my pen flying across the page as emotions poured out. For the following subjects, math, English, and the sciences, I tackled them one problem at a time. If I got stuck, I skipped it and came back after finishing everything else. Leo's advice worked. I wasn't aiming for perfection, just a solid, stable performance. When the bell rang for the end of the last exam, I put down my pen and let out a long sigh. No matter the result, I had given it my all. 3 days later, the results were posted. I stood in front of the ranking board, unable to believe my eyes. Lily Chen, total score 689, third in the grade. My name was right there after Leo and another top student, Yang Yi. I had jumped more than 20 places since the last exam. Oh my God, Lily, you're amazing. Sarah slapped my shoulder from behind. How did you suddenly do so well? Before I could answer, a crowd of students had gathered around, all asking me how I studied and if I had any secret tips. I stood there, overwhelmed, when my eyes accidentally met Leo's. He was standing on the edge of the crowd. He gave me a slight nod, the corner of his mouth twitching into an almost imperceptible smile. I just did a lot of practice problems, I mumbled to my classmates. Suddenly, I saw Mark standing not far away, watching us with a dark expression. His rank had dropped to 250th in the grade, which in the competitive world of college admissions, meant he might not even get into a decent university. After the crowd dispersed, Mark blocked my path. Congratulations, Lily, he said, forcing a smile. I always knew you were smart. Thanks, I replied curtly, turning to leave. Wait, he grabbed my wrist. I need to ask you for a favor. I pulled my hand back. What is it? My grades, you saw them. He stared at the ground, shifting his feet nervously. Could you help me study? Like you used to. In my past life, I did often help him study, even sacrificing my own review time to organize notes and explain his mistakes. And how did he repay me? Every time we argued after getting married, he would sneer, "You think you're so great? If my parents hadn't forced me, do you think I would have married a nerd like you?" Sorry, I don't have time, I said, turning to walk away. Just for a week. No, 3 days would be fine. He pleaded, rushing after me. Come on, for old time's sake. Mark, I stopped and looked him straight in the eye. Do you know why I got 3rd place? Because for the past month, I've studied until dawn every single day. I gave up all my free time and social life. I even considered talking to you a waste of time. Do you really think I'm going to throw away all my hard work for you? His face flushed a deep red. How did you become so selfish? This isn't selfish. It's self-respect, I said calmly. You don't study yourself, so what right do you have to ask someone else to sacrifice for you? I walked away without looking back, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't from nervousness or fear, but from a sense of release. I had finally said the words I couldn't say in my past life. After school, as I was packing my bag for the library, an unexpected person appeared at the classroom door, Jessica. Lily, can we talk for a minute? She asked, her voice surprisingly friendly, a stark contrast to our last encounter in the cafeteria. I watched her warily. What's up? She walked in and sat down in the seat in front of mine. First, I want to apologize for my attitude in the cafeteria the other day. I was in a bad mood. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Second, Jessica bit her lip. I wanted to ask you how you study. My grades have always been average, and I'm really impressed by how quickly you've improved. I looked at her, surprised. The Jessica from my past life was an arrogant school belle who, aside from her crowd of admirers, rarely initiated conversations with anyone, let alone asked for academic advice. I just do a lot of practice problems and review my mistakes, I answered cautiously. Can you be more specific? Jessica took out a small notebook, looking ready to take notes. Like your schedule, what review books you use. Seeing her sincere expression, I let my guard down and shared some of my study methods. As we talked, I realized Jessica was actually very smart and quick to understand. She probably just hadn't focused on her studies before. By the way, Jessica asked suddenly as our conversation wound down, "Are you and Leo close?" My heart skipped a beat. "We're okay. We've just studied together a few times. He's my cousin," Jessica said with a smile. "We have different last names, but his dad and my mom are siblings." My eyes widened. "What? He didn't tell you?" Jessica looked surprised too. "I thought you two were really close." "We're just study partners," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my mind was reeling. Leo and Jessica were cousins? Did Leo know about Mark and Jessica in my past life? Did he know what happened to me? "Leo's actually a really great guy, he's just not good at expressing himself," Jessica continued. "He mentioned you to me a few days ago. Said you were special." My heart skipped another beat. What did he say about me?" "He said you're a really hard worker and you have a unique way of thinking," Jessica said with a wink. Coming from him, that's high praise. He barely talks about anyone. I didn't know how to respond, so I pretended to organize my backpack to hide my blushing face. "Oh right," Jessica said, standing up to leave. "Mark has been pestering me lately, saying I need to be responsible for him or something. It's so annoying. Do you know what that's about?" My hands froze. "Responsible?" "Yeah, from when he hurt his foot. I reluctantly helped him to the nurse's office. And now he's latched onto me," Jessica said, rolling her eyes. "He's saying since I helped him once, I have to keep helping him. It's completely ridiculous." I suddenly thought about Mark and Jessica getting married overseas in my past life. I had always assumed they were in love, but hearing Jessica's tone now, it seemed that wasn't the case at all. You don't like him?" I asked tentatively. "Mark." Jessica scoffed. "Besides being decent looking, what else does he have going for him? His grades are average, he's just okay at basketball, and he thinks he's all that. I'm planning to go abroad for grad school. Why would I ever be involved with him?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. If Jessica never even liked Mark, why did they get married overseas in my past life? Did Mark force her? Or did he deceive her? "Lily, are you okay?" Jessica asked, looking at me with confusion. "I'm fine," I forced a smile. "Just a little tired." "Well, you should get some rest," Jessica said sincerely. "Thanks for sharing your study tips. They were really helpful." Watching her leave, I felt a mix of emotions. In my past life, I saw Jessica as my rival and hated her for years. But now, it seemed she might have been one of Mark's victims too. This realization made most of my hostility toward her disappear. Over the weekend, Leo and I studied at the library as usual. I wanted to ask him about Jessica several times, but didn't know how to bring it up. Finally, during our afternoon break, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Leo," Jessica said, "you two are cousins?" His hand paused on the page. He looked up at me. "Yeah. Why didn't you tell me?" "I never found the right time," he said, pushing up his glasses. "And is it that important?" I thought about it. It wasn't really important, just surprising. But another question lingered in my mind. "So, do you know that Mark has a crush on Jessica?" Leo's expression turned a bit strange. "I know. A lot of people at school know. Jessica said she doesn't like him." "She doesn't," Leo said, closing his book. "She likes guys who are smart and ambitious. Mark doesn't fit her criteria." "Thank you, Leo," I said suddenly and sincerely. "For what?" "For everything," I said with a smile. "The notes, the study methods." The tips of Leo's ears turned slightly red. He looked down and opened his book. "Let's get back to studying. The exams are just a month away." I nodded and dove back into my work, but my heart felt calmer and more resolute than ever before. The Monday of the week after the mock exam results were posted, a strange atmosphere filled the classroom. During the break, I noticed several classmates glancing between me and Leo before huddling together to whisper. When Leo was out of the room, Sarah sidled up to my desk mysteriously. "Lily, you guys should be careful," she whispered. "Mark went to see Ms. Lee after school yesterday. He told her you and Leo were dating, and that it was a bad influence on the class." The pen in my hand nearly fell to the floor. "What?" He made it sound so convincing, saying you go to the library together every day and even have private dates on the weekend, Sarah said with a pout. Everyone knows he's just jealous that you did so well on the exam and are getting close to Leo. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The Mark from my past life was just like this. The moment he sensed me slipping from his control, he would do anything to sabotage me. I just never thought he'd resort to such a childish tactic. Thanks for the heads up, I said to Sarah, forcing a smile. But we really are just studying together. Of course I know that, Sarah patted my shoulder. But Ms. Lee might want to talk to you. Just be prepared. The bell rang, and Ms. Lee walked in with a stack of test papers. I stole a glance at Mark. He was sitting up straight, a smug smile on his face, occasionally looking back at me with a provocative glint in his eyes. Before I hand back the tests, I have a few things to say, Ms. Lee said, setting the papers down. Her eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Mark. A student recently reported to me that there's some dating going on in the class. A murmur rippled through the classroom. I felt my face flush. Leo, however, remained expressionless, though the pen in his hand paused for a fraction of a second. I believe, Ms. Lee continued, her voice steady and firm, that during this final push for the exams, every student should be focused on their own studies, not on gossiping about other people's normal social interactions. The smile on Mark's face froze. Certain students would be better off spending their time looking at their own test papers instead of staring at others, Ms. Lee said, pulling a paper from the stack. For example, on this mock exam, someone dropped from the top 100 in the grade to over 200th. Yet they still have the energy to worry about who is or isn't going to the library. The entire class turned to stare at Mark. His face turned a deep shade of crimson, the veins on his neck bulging. Now I'll hand back the tests, Ms. Lee said, moving on. Leo 148, first in the grade. As Leo went up to get his paper, Ms. Lee patted his shoulder. Keep it up. Lily 143, third in the grade. When I walked to the front, Ms. Lee gave me a slight smile. Great improvement. I took my test, the knot in my stomach finally loosening. As I walked back to my seat, my eyes met Mark's. His were burning with anger and resentment, but I just calmly looked away. When the bell rang for lunch, students left in small groups. I deliberately packed my things slowly, waiting for the room to empty. But Mark suddenly blocked my path at the corner of the hallway. Are you satisfied now? He spat, his teeth clenched. The whole class is laughing at me. You brought this on yourself, I said coldly. Leo and I are just study partners. What right do you have to slander us? Study partners? Mark sneered. The whole class can see he likes you. So what if he does? I looked him straight in the eye. Who I hang out with is my business. It's not for you to interfere. You. He grabbed my wrist forcefully. Lily, you've changed. You never used to be like this with me. Let go. I yanked my hand away. Wake up, Mark. I'm not that stupid girl who revolves around you anymore. I have my own life, my own goals, and you. I deliberately looked him up and down. You completely bombed the mock exams, and you still have time to meddle in other people's lives? His face went pale, as if he'd been stabbed in the chest. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding, but my steps were steady. As I rounded the corner, I nearly ran into someone, Leo. He was leaning against the wall, holding 2 workbooks, having clearly heard the entire conversation. Sorry, I said, looking down in embarrassment. Don't be, he said, handing me one of the workbooks. Are you still going to the library this weekend? I looked up at him. Sunlight streamed through the hallway window, outlining him in a bright halo. His expression was as calm as ever, but his eyes held a warmth I had never seen before. Yes, I said, taking the workbook, a smile forming on my lips. Of course I am. We walked back to the classroom for the evening study session side by side, neither of us mentioning what had just happened, and sat back down in our seats under the astonished gazes of our classmates. Nothing and no one was going to stop me now. 2 weeks before the SATs, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. The classroom fell silent. There was no more chatting or joking around. Even during breaks, the only sounds were the rustling of pages and the scratching of pens. I buried myself in a mountain of practice tests, doing 3 full sets a day, filling my error logbook, and memorizing key concepts. The notebook Leo had given me was now worn and frayed at the edges, covered in my own dense annotations. Lily, the homeroom teacher wants to see you in her office," Sarah called from the doorway. I put down my pen, rubbed my sore wrist, and headed to the faculty office. On the way, I passed the nurse's office. The door was ajar, and I saw Mark sitting inside while the school nurse took his blood pressure. He looked pale, with dark circles under his eyes, completely worn out. Ever since the mock exam results, Mark's condition had been deteriorating. I heard his parents were furious with his grades and had hired 3 tutors to work with him in shifts, but with little success. A few times, when I was studying late at the library, I saw him running laps on the track alone, frantically trying to vent his emotions. "Excuse me," I said, knocking lightly on the office door. "Come in." Ms. Lee looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Lily, have a seat." I sat in the chair across from her, noticing my college application form spread out on her desk. My first choice was clearly written: Capital University School of Medicine, Clinical Medicine Program. "I've looked over your application. It's very ambitious," Ms. Lee said, pushing up her glasses. "With your current scores, as long as you perform as usual, getting into Capital University's program shouldn't be a problem." I nodded, my heart racing. The dream from my past life was finally within reach. However, Ms. Lee's tone shifted. "I hear you've been studying very intensely lately. Some students mentioned you often stay at the library until it closes, and are the first to arrive at the classroom in the morning." I pursed my lips. The exams are right around the corner. I just want to push a little harder. Effort is a good thing, but it needs to be balanced. Ms. Lee's voice softened. "Your health is your most important asset. Especially since you want to study medicine, you should understand this better than anyone." I looked down at my hands. My knuckles were slightly red from writing so much, and my nails were cut short. "I understand, Ms. Lee. I'll pay attention to getting enough rest." "By the way," Ms. Lee said as if suddenly remembering something, "Mark's parents came to see me yesterday. They wanted to ask if you could help tutor Mark. I know you two grew up together." I looked up sharply. "Ms. Lee, I refuse." She seemed taken aback by my bluntness. "His situation is quite difficult. His grades have been slipping." "Ms. Lee," I took a deep breath. "It's not that I'm unwilling to help a classmate, but this is the final sprint. Every minute is precious. Mark has tutors and his parents' support. All I have is myself." Ms. Lee looked at me for a long moment, then finally nodded. "You're right. I was being thoughtless. Focus on your preparations. I believe you can achieve a great score." Leaving the office, I let out a long sigh of relief. The old me would have agreed without a second thought, even feeling it was my duty. But now I had finally learned to put my own needs first. On my way home, I was stopped at the school gate by Mark's parents. "Oh, Lily, I'm begging you," Mark's mother said, grabbing my hand, her eyes red. "Mark's grades are so bad he's in danger of not even getting into a second-tier college. Please just help him. For the sake of you two growing up together." I gently pulled my hand away. "Auntie, I'm sorry, I really don't have the time. We can pay you." Mark's father chimed in hurriedly. $200 an hour. No, 300. I shook my head. "It's not about the money. The exams are almost here, and I need to focus on my own preparations. How can you be so selfish?" His mother's voice suddenly grew sharp. "Mark was so good to you, protecting you since you were kids. Is this how you repay him?" I looked at her quietly, suddenly remembering what she said when she came to see me in the hospital after my amputation in my past life. "Lily, don't you worry. Our family will take responsibility. Mark will take care of you for the rest of your life." At the time, I thought it was concern. Later, I realized it was just guilt and charity. After we were married, they allowed Mark to subject me to his cold abuse, and even repeatedly tried to persuade me to use a surrogate. It was laughable. "Auntie," I said calmly, "Mark has professional tutors, and I'm just a student. You should trust the professionals instead of pinning your hopes on me." After a slight bow, I turned and walked away, letting their shouts fade behind me. Once I turned the corner, I realized my hands were shaking and had to stop and take a few deep breaths to calm down. When I got home, Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I put down my backpack and, after a moment's hesitation, told her about my run-in with Mark's parents. Mom put down her knife and wiped her hands. "They called me this afternoon too." "What?" I stared at her, wide-eyed. Mom sighed. I turned them down flat. Your job right now is to focus on your exams. Where would you find the time to tutor someone else? I went over and hugged her. Thanks, Mom. Silly girl. Mom patted my back. It was my fault before. I always told you to take care of Mark, thinking that girls should be considerate and thoughtful. Now I understand. You have to be responsible for your own life first. My nose tingled, and I buried my face in her shoulder. My mother in my past life had held me just like this, crying and apologizing after my amputation. But by then it was too late. After dinner, I got a call from Leo, asking me to meet him on the school roof. It was the first time we were meeting somewhere other than the library, and I was a bit puzzled, but I went anyway. On that early summer night, a gentle breeze swept across the rooftop. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like stars. Leo was leaning against the railing, looking up at the night sky. You're here, he said, turning his head as he heard my footsteps. What's up? I asked, walking over to him. He handed me a bottle of warm milk. Relax. You've been wound way too tight lately. I took the milk and sipped it slowly. The warm liquid soothed my throat and eased the day's fatigue. Thanks, I smiled at him. I am pretty tired. Look, Leo pointed to the sky. The Big Dipper. I followed his finger and saw the 7 bright stars forming the shape of a ladle in the night sky. And over there is the constellation Aquila. Leo's voice was especially soft in the darkness. The brightest one in the middle is Altair. I looked at him, surprised. You study astronomy? I look at it sometimes, he said, pushing up his glasses. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me stargazing. He said the universe is vast, and human troubles are small. I looked up at the immense, starry sky and suddenly felt that my anxiety and stress were indeed insignificant. No matter how the exams turned out, this wouldn't be the end of my life. Leo, I asked softly, why do you want to study medicine? He was silent for a moment. My mother had a congenital heart defect. She passed away last year. That's when I decided I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. My heart clenched. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's okay, he shook his head. What about you? Why surgery? I gazed at the distant lights, memories of my past life flooding back. I once had a dream that I lost my legs. I know that feeling of despair and helplessness. If I can become a surgeon, maybe I can help more people like me. It was the first time since my rebirth that I had mentioned my past life to anyone, albeit disguised as a dream. The darkness hid my trembling hands. Leo didn't press for details, just gave a soft We stood there side by side, looking at the stars, each lost in our own thoughts. A strange sense of peace and understanding flowed between us. Good luck on the exams, Leo said suddenly as we were about to leave. I nodded. You too. The following days flew by. I fell into a routine of doing practice tests, correcting mistakes, and reviewing. My error logbook got thinner and thinner, while my confidence grew. 3 days before the exams, the school let out for self-study. As I was at home organizing my final notes, I got a call from Jessica. Lily, her voice was a little frantic. Mark just asked me if we could meet after school. He said he has something important to give me. I said no, but he seems insistent on waiting for me near my house. My heart sank. In my past life, today was the day I got into the car accident while delivering the love letter to Jessica for Mark. He probably wants to give you the love letter himself, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's so annoying, Jessica complained. I've turned him down so many times. By the way, my cousin said if you're free, you two could go to the library tomorrow for a final push? Okay, I agreed. After hanging up, I was lost in thought. Mark was going to deliver the letter himself. History seemed to be repeating itself, only with the roles reversed. If he went to deliver the letter, would he get into an accident like I did in my past life? Should I warn him? My finger hovered over Mark's name in my phone's contact list, but I couldn't bring myself to press it. The cruel words he had said to me echoed in my ears. You're just a cripple. How could you ever compare to Jessica? If you hadn't gotten involved and gotten into a car crash delivering that letter, why would I have been forced to marry you? I locked my phone and picked up my pen to continue studying. Everyone has the right to choose their own path, and they have to be responsible for their choices. This time, I chose to focus on my own future. The day of the exams arrived. Sitting in the exam hall, I felt surprisingly calm. When the test papers were handed out, I focused completely on answering the questions, forgetting the time, my surroundings, and even the fact that I had been reborn. At that moment, I was just a regular student, fighting for my dream. When the bell for the final subject rang, I put down my pen and let out a long, slow breath. It was over. Whatever the result, I had given it my all. I walked out of the exam hall into the bright, almost blinding sunlight. Mom was waiting for me at the school gate, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "Congratulations to my daughter on finishing her exams," she said, hugging me. The scent of the flowers was all around me. "Mom, did Mark take the exams?" I asked hesitantly. My mother's expression grew complicated. He had an accident. He was hit by a car 2 nights ago. His right leg was severely injured. The surgery took several hours. Even though I had anticipated it, hearing the news still sent a jolt through me. The gears of fate had turned with such precision, only this time. It was Mark who was run over, not me. "Is it serious?" I asked softly. "I heard he might need an amputation," Mom sighed. "His parents are devastated. He's their only son." I didn't say anything, just hugged my mom tightly. If I hadn't been reborn, it would be my parents who were devastated right now. Back home, I shut myself in my room, lying on my bed and staring at the ceiling. I should have felt a sense of vengeful satisfaction, but strangely, all I felt was a deep exhaustion and relief. Mark had paid the price for his choices, and I could finally truly move on. It wasn't until 3 days after the exams that my mother told me the full details of Mark's surgery. His lower right leg was amputated, she said while cutting fruit. "I heard the recovery isn't going well, there might be an infection." I put down the book I was reading. "Should we go see him?" My mother looked at me, surprised. "You want to go? We're neighbors and we grew up together," I said calmly. "It's a matter of basic courtesy." That afternoon, my parents and I went to the hospital. Mark's room was filled with flowers and fruit baskets, but his parents looked like they had aged 10 years. Mark lay on the hospital bed. His right leg, covered by a white blanket, was noticeably shorter. "Lily," he said, his eyes lighting up for a moment when he saw me, then dimming again. "How did your exams go?" "Fine," I answered briefly, placing the fruit we brought on the nightstand. "How are you feeling?" He gave a bitter smile. "How do you think?" "I'm a cripple." "Don't say that," his mother interjected, her eyes red. "The doctor said you'll still be able to walk with a prosthesis." Mark didn't respond, just looked at me. "You must have done really well, right? You studied so hard." I didn't deny it. "We'll see when the scores come out." I didn't even get to take the exams, his voice choked. "My life is over." The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. My parents made small talk with his, while I stood to the side, watching the once vibrant young man now lying in bed, wallowing in self-pity. I had experienced this same despair in my past life, but at least now I had a second chance. Why didn't you come see me sooner?" Mark suddenly whispered when the adults were talking amongst themselves. "The day of the accident, I kept calling your name." I looked him straight in the eye. "Mark, we're not friends anymore, remember?" His face went white. "Just because I didn't want you hanging out with Leo? You can be that cruel?" "No. It's because you looked down on me, used me, and never once truly respected me," I said calmly. "Focus on getting better. I wish you a speedy recovery." As we left the hospital, my mom looked at me with concern. "Lily, between you and Mark." "Mom," I interrupted her, "he and I have been on different paths for a long time." My mother seemed to want to say more, but in the end, she just sighed and let it go. On the day the exam results were released, I was sitting in front of the computer early, my finger hovering over the search button. My mom stood nervously behind me, while my dad pretended to be calmly reading the newspaper, though he glanced at the screen every 3 seconds. "Go on, check it," Dad finally said, unable to stand the suspense. I took a deep breath and clicked the button. The moment the page refreshed, my eyes went straight to the total score. 708. 66th in the entire province. "Ah!" Mom shrieked and hugged me. "My daughter is brilliant." Dad threw down his newspaper and pulled us both into a hug. "That's my girl. You're a lock for Capital University's med school." I just sat there as tears streamed down my face. A score of 708 was something I couldn't have even dreamed of in my past life. All the hard work and perseverance since my rebirth had paid off in this one moment. The following days were a blur of joy and activity. Filling out applications, preparing enrollment documents, accepting congratulations from friends and relatives. My phone was flooded with messages, and even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years called to celebrate. "Lily, we're thinking of throwing you a college acceptance party," Mom suggested at dinner one night. "We'll invite all our friends and family to celebrate. What do you think?" "Sounds great," I said with a smile. "But let's not go too crazy." "How can we not go all out?" Mom's eyes lit up. "You're the only one in our neighborhood in years to get into Capital University, and in the top 100 of the province, no less." The party was set for that weekend in a hotel ballroom. I wore a simple white dress, my hair tied in a high, neat ponytail. The ballroom was full of people, relatives, neighbors, teachers, and classmates. "Lily, congratulations." Sarah walked in, holding a bouquet of flowers. "You and Leo got the best scores in our class. You've made us all so proud." I took the flowers and looked around. "Is Leo here?" "I just saw him outside," Sarah said with a wink. "I think he wants to talk to you alone." My heart suddenly sped up. I made an excuse to go to the restroom and slipped out of the ballroom. Sure enough, Leo was standing by the window in the hallway. Sunlight streamed through the glass, outlining him in a bright halo. "Congratulations," he smiled when he saw me. "You're a sure thing for med school." "Yeah," I said, walking over to him. "What about you? You're set on Capital University?" He nodded. "That's amazing," I said sincerely. We were quiet for a moment before he turned to face me. "Lily, there's something I want to tell you." "What is it?" I looked up at him, noticing the tips of his ears were slightly red. He took a deep breath. "I like you. Not as a study partner, but—" "Leo," I interrupted him softly. "We're still too young. We haven't experienced enough. It's easy to mistake friendship for love." His expression froze. Are you rejecting me?" "It's not a rejection," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I just think we should focus on our studies first. Medical school is incredibly demanding, and a long-distance relationship would be even harder. If our feelings haven't changed in a few years, can we talk about this then?" The truth was, I did have feelings for Leo, but the trauma from my past relationship made me hesitant to start a new one. I needed time, space, and to become a better version of myself first. Leo looked at me for a long time, then finally nodded. "I understand. But I'll wait." My heart ached a little as he turned to leave, but I knew it was the right decision. Back in the ballroom, I was immediately enveloped in the joyful atmosphere. Classmates crowded around asking questions, and teachers came by one to congratulate me. Amid the laughter and celebration, I noticed a lonely figure in the corner, Mark. He was in a wheelchair, the pant leg over his right leg hanging empty. No one was talking to him, no one was even looking at him. In my past life, I would have rushed to his side at an event like this, terrified he would feel lonely. But now I chose to stay in the crowd, accepting the praise and honor that were mine. As the party was winding down, Mark wheeled himself over and blocked my path. "Are you satisfied now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Are you happy to see me like this?" I looked at him calmly. "I don't know what you mean. You could have stopped me." He hissed, his eyes bloodshot. "If you had just agreed to deliver that letter for me, this never would have happened." My heart skipped a beat. Mark, you're still so selfish." I gave a disdainful smile and turned to walk toward my waiting parents. I could hear Mark's hysterical shouting behind me, but it was quickly drowned out by the music and laughter from the ballroom. "Is everything okay?" Mom asked with concern. "What did he say?" "Nothing," I said, taking her arm. "Let's go home." As we left the hotel, the summer night sky was exceptionally bright. I looked up for the Big Dipper, remembering my conversation with Leo on the rooftop. Whatever the future held, at least for now, my life was heading in the right direction. The acceptance letter from the Capital University School of Medicine arrived a week later. I held the heavy envelope, gently tracing the gold-embossed name of the school, tears blurring my vision. The dream that was so out of reach in my past life had finally come true. The ginkgo leaves at the Capital University School of Medicine turned yellow, then green, then yellow again. 10 years passed in a flash. I stood in front of the surgical residence announcement board at the teaching hospital, my finger gently tracing the notice with my name and photo on it, Lily Chen, orthopedic surgery resident. Sunlight streamed through the hallway window, landing on the paper and shining straight into my heart. Dr. Chen, congratulations. Head nurse Wang said with a smile as she walked over. I hear you turned down an offer from Johns Hopkins. So many people would kill for that opportunity. I smiled and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Good orthopedic surgeons are needed more here at home. Over the past 10 years, Leo and I had kept in touch, maintaining a close but undefined relationship. He completed a dual degree in medicine and biology at Capital University, and was now at Harvard pursuing an MD PhD. We occasionally discussed academic topics on WhatsApp or recommended the latest medical papers to each other. Whenever he came back to the country, we would meet at a coffee shop near our old high school and talk for hours. Dr. Chen, operating room 3 is ready, an intern named Zhang poked his head in to inform me. I nodded and walked quickly toward the OR. Today's surgery was a complex knee replacement for a 70-year-old retired teacher. Washing my hands, sterilizing, putting on my surgical gown. The entire process was as natural to me as breathing. Under the shadowless lamp, as the scalpel made the first incision, I still felt a sense of sacred duty. Every time I held that scalpel, it was a form of redemption for the girl who had lost her legs in a past life. The surgery lasted 3 hours, and was a success. As I walked out of the OR, I took off my mask and let out a long sigh. A nurse handed me my phone, which showed 3 missed calls, all from Leo. I called him back, and he picked up almost immediately. Lily, Leo's voice came through the phone. I'm back in the country. Great. Dinner's on me, I said, walking to the doctor's lounge to pour myself a glass of water. Have you heard about Jessica and Mark? He paused. They're married. My hand trembled, and the glass nearly slipped from my fingers. What? It happened last year. Jessica was forced into it. The Liu family threatened to sue her for causing Mark's accident if she didn't marry him. Leo's voice was tight with suppressed anger. They're a family of shameless bullies. They wouldn't let up, and Jessica's parents were too scared and pressured her to agree. I leaned against the wall, the image of Jessica's once vibrant face flashing in my mind. The scene from my past life overlapped with the present. Only the roles were completely reversed. How is she now? I asked softly. Not good, Leo sighed. Mark's leg injury never fully healed, and he needs frequent surgeries. His personality has become very volatile and he's not good to Jessica. I only found out about all this recently. My nails dug into my palm. After hanging up, I stood by the window, gazing at the distant city skyline. It had been 10 years. I thought I had completely let go of the past, but hearing this news still sent a dull ache through my chest. Not for Mark, but for Jessica, the girl I had considered my rival in a past life, only to discover in this one that she was a victim, too. After work, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I drove to my old high school. It was dismissal time, and students in their uniforms laughed and joked as they poured out of the buildings, their youthful faces full of hope for the future. I stood by the track, seeing a ghostly image of my younger self, the foolish girl who used to run errands for Mark. Lily? Is that really you? A familiar voice came from behind. I turned to see my old homeroom teacher, Ms. Lee. The wrinkles around her eyes were deeper, but her smile was as warm as ever. Ms. Lee, I said, happily walking up to her. I heard you became an orthopedic surgeon. I'm so proud of you, she said, taking my hand and looking me up and down. The little girl who suddenly found her focus in class has really achieved her dream. My nose tingled. It was all thanks to your encouragement. Come, let's go to my office and chat, Ms. Lee invited warmly. As it happens, the school is planning to invite some outstanding alumni back for a lecture next month. Would you be interested? Following Ms. Lee down the familiar hallway, my eyes drifted unconsciously toward our old senior year classroom. Through the window, I could almost see Leo's profile as he bent over his notes and Mark turning back to smile at me. Those memories felt so distant now, like someone else's story. Ms. Lee's office was filled with graduation photos from over the years. I found our class picture and gently traced my finger over the young faces. Mark was in the back row, smiling brightly. Jessica was in the front center, beautiful and radiant. Leo was diagonally behind me, his expression serious, and as for me, I could barely recognize that shy, smiling girl. Have you heard about Mark? Ms. Lee asked suddenly, handing me a cup of tea. I nodded. I just heard he got married. That boy, he's changed a lot. Ms. Lee sighed. He was a different person after the accident. He came to the class reunion last year, in his wheelchair, ordering Jessica around. It was heartbreaking to watch. Heartbreaking for who? I asked softly. For both of them, Ms. Lee said, her sad eyes looking at me. That girl, Jessica, she was so proud back then. Now all her spirit is gone. And Mark, too, going from a bright young man to that. I looked down at my reflection in the tea, silent. Wasn't I the same in my past life? From a high school student full of dreams to a bitter woman trapped in a wheelchair and a failed marriage. But seeing you now, I'm so happy. Ms. Lee patted my hand. You've proven that no matter what you go through, you can always choose to stand up and move forward. The sun had set by the time I left the school. I stood at the gate, taking one last look at the building that held so many memories. Whatever the future held, at least at this moment, I was no longer a puppet for others to control. My phone rang again. It was the hospital's emergency department. Dr. Chun, we have a complex case that needs your consultation. The on-call doctor's voice was urgent. The patient has a severe infection in an old leg injury, with signs of osteomyelitis. He may need emergency surgery. I'm on my way back, I said, walking quickly to my car. When I got back to the hospital, I went straight to the consultation room. Through the glass window, I saw several doctors already gathered around. The patient on the bed had his back to the door, but I recognized that silhouette instantly. Even after 10 years, I would never mistake it. Mark. My hand paused on the doorknob for a second before I pushed the door open. Dr. Chun is here, the chief physician, Dr. Wang, greeted me. This patient had a lower right leg amputation 10 years ago. For the past 6 months, the stump has been repeatedly infected, and multiple surgeries at other hospitals have been ineffective. Considering your specialty in complex orthopedic trauma and infections, we wanted to get your opinion. I walked to the bedside and finally saw Mark's face clearly. He was much thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a downturned mouth that gave him a perpetual gloomy expression. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened, and his lips trembled, but no words came out. Let me see the chart, I said calmly, taking the folder from a resident and professionally flipping through it. Lily. Mark finally found his voice. You became a doctor? Dr. Chun is the youngest attending orthopedic surgeon at our hospital, Dr. Wang introduced proudly. I pretended not to see Mark's shocked expression and focused on the chart. The situation was indeed complex: multiple failed surgeries, a drug-resistant infection, and necrotic tissue at the stump. The slightest misstep could lead to a second, higher amputation, or even threaten his life. He needs immediate surgical debridement, along with sensitive antibiotics, I said, closing the chart. If we can't get the infection under control, we may have to consider a higher-level amputation. No. Mark suddenly became agitated. You can't cut any more. I'm all ready. His voice caught in his throat, and his eyes darted around frantically. Just then the door opened, and a haggard-looking woman rushed in, clutching a handful of payment receipts. It was Jessica. I almost didn't recognize her. Her once shiny black hair was cut into a dry, short style. Her eyes had lost their sparkle, and her lips drooped at the corners, making her look as if all the life had been drained out of her. She froze when she saw me, then quickly looked down and stood silently by Mark's side. This is the patient's family member, the resident explained. My wife, Mark emphasized, looking at me with a strange expression that was part defiance, part plea. I nodded and turned professionally to Jessica. The patient's condition is serious and requires immediate surgery. As his family member, please sign the consent form. Jessica took the form, her fingers trembling slightly. She looked up at me, a complex emotion flashing in her eyes, before silently signing her name. Schedule the surgery for first thing tomorrow morning, I told the team. intensify the antibiotics tonight, and monitor his temperature and blood work. After the consultation, I walked quickly to my office, my heart pounding in my chest. 10 years. I never thought we would meet again like this. And I never thought that seeing Mark and Jessica in their current state would bring me no pleasure. Only a deep sense of sorrow. Dr. Chun. A voice called out to me. I turned to see Jessica chasing after me, out of breath. Yes. I stopped. She bit her lip, seemingly struggling with what to say. Finally, she just whispered, "Please do a good job on his surgery. He may be, but he's still." Jessica, I interrupted her. I'm a doctor. No matter who the patient is, I will do my best to treat them. That's my professional duty. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. Thank you. And I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? For everything. Her voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, maybe this is my karma. I took a deep breath. It's not your fault. I looked at the poor girl who had been manipulated by Mark for half her life. She looked at me in surprise, as if she hadn't expected me to say that. Go get some rest, I said, handing her a tissue. Tomorrow's surgery will be long. As I turned to leave, I remembered something and looked back. Does Leo know you're at the hospital? She shook her head. Don't tell him. I don't want him to worry. That night I tossed and turned in the on-call room. At 3 in the morning, I got up to check on Mark. He was propped up in bed, staring blankly at the night outside his window. His eyes lit up when he saw me come in. Lily, I knew you'd come. Routine rounds, I said calmly, checking his drip and vital signs. You know, his voice was hoarse. I've thought about you every single day for the past 10 years. I regret not cherishing you back then. My hand paused for a second before I continued recording the monitor's data. Seeing you so successful now, I'm truly happy for you, he said, reaching for my hand. I swiftly avoided it. The patient needs to remain calm. It's important for the surgery, I said in a professional tone. Don't be like this, his voice took on a pleading tone. I know you hate me, but I really know I was wrong. I was forced to marry Jessica by my parents. I don't love her at all. I looked up at him and suddenly found the situation absurd. This was an exact replica of what he must have told Jessica about me in our past life, just with the roles reversed. Did you know, I said softly, that I once had an amputation? He froze. What? In another time, another life, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I got into a car accident delivering a love letter to Jessica for you. I lost my right leg and missed the SATs. Your parents, out of guilt, forced you to marry me. But you hated me to the bone. And in the end you left me and ran off with Jessica overseas. His face went deathly pale. What? What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about, I said, taking out my phone and quietly starting a recording. Mark, no matter which reality we're in, you always blame others for your mistakes. Do you really think you're blameless? His breathing grew ragged. I'm not. It was you who insisted on giving Jessica that love letter. Why won't you admit it now? Yes, I was obsessed back then, but I realize now that it's you I love. Now it's your turn to have a taste of it, I said, taking a step closer. Trapped in a broken body, dependent on someone you don't love, living every day in regret. How does it feel? Lily, tears welled up in his eyes. Please forgive me. Give me a chance. I'll divorce Jessica. I will give you the best medical treatment, I said, taking a step back, because that is my professional responsibility. But beyond that, there has been nothing between us for a long time. With that, I turned and left, hearing his suppressed sobs as the door clicked shut. In the hallway, I stopped, saved the recording, and sent it to Jessica with a simple message. You deserve to know the truth. And you deserve a better life. On the day of the surgery, I arrived at the hospital an hour early. In front of the restroom mirror, I washed my hands meticulously, the repetitive, mechanical motions something I had done thousands of times before. The cool water running over my arms washed away the last traces of hesitation and doubt. Today, I wasn't Lily Chin. I was Dr. Chin, a professional orthopedic surgeon. The operating room was ready. The anesthesiologist, scrub nurse, and circulating nurse were all in position. Under the shadowless lamp, Mark lay quietly on the operating table, already under anesthesia. Surgery begins, I announced, reaching for the scalpel the nurse handed me. The moment the blade cut through the skin, my world shrank to the size of the surgical field. Infected tissue, damaged bone, residual sutures, all the problems were laid bare before me. A decade of medical training combined with the personal experience of my past life gave me an extraordinary understanding of this type of trauma. "Cautery," I said, holding out my hand. The scrub nurse placed the instrument precisely in my palm. The surgery lasted 6 hours. We completely removed the infected and necrotic tissue, repaired the damaged bone structure, and preserved as much of the stump length as possible. By the time the final suture was in place, my scrubs were soaked with sweat. "The surgery was successful," I announced, straightening up, tired but satisfied. "Send him to recovery. Monitor vitals closely." As I left the operating room, I ran right into a frantic Jessica. She looked like she hadn't slept all night, her eyes red and swollen, clutching a crumpled tissue in her hand. "How did it go?" she asked anxiously. "The surgery was a success," I said, taking off my mask. "We've cleared the source of the infection and saved the stump. But he'll need long-term physical therapy." Her shoulders slumped as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me," I said, rubbing my brow tiredly. "It's my job." After a moment's hesitation, I asked the question that was on my mind. "Did you listen to the recording?" Jessica nodded, a flicker of pain in her eyes. "I did. To be honest, I didn't need to hear it to know. Ever since we got married, he's often called out your name in his sleep, and then cursed me for not being you." My heart felt like it had been pricked by a needle. "Jessica, you don't have to live like this." "I know," she said with a bitter smile. "But my parents are afraid of the Liu family's retaliation. I don't know what to do. Does Leo know about your situation?" She shook her head. "I don't want him to worry. He's busy enough on his own over there." "You fool," I couldn't help but say. "Family is who you're supposed to rely on at times like this. If Leo knew you were suffering like this and didn't tell him, he would be the one who's truly hurt." Jessica's tears finally fell. I really can't take it anymore." I took her to the doctor's lounge and poured her a cup of hot water. In broken sentences, she told me about the last 10 years, being forced to marry, giving up her chance to study abroad, taking care of the moody and unpredictable Mark day and night, and enduring the cold remarks of his parents. "They think I'm the one who ruined Mark," Jessica said, wiping her tears. "They say if I hadn't rejected his love letter that night, he wouldn't have gotten into the accident." "That's not your fault," I said firmly. "Everyone has to be responsible for their own choices. Mark chose to speed in the rain that day. It's only natural that he should bear the consequences." Jessica looked up at me, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "You really think so?" "Of course," I said, taking her cold hand in mine. "Jessica, you're only 28. You have a long life ahead of you. Don't make the same mistakes someone else did." "I want a divorce," Jessica said suddenly, her voice soft but firm. "But the Liu family will never agree. They said if I dare to divorce him, they'll make sure my parents can't live in this city." I thought for a moment, and an idea came to me. What if you had proof that Mark was mentally abusing you? Like a recording? Jessica's eyes lit up. "You mean, the recording I sent you yesterday, plus his usual verbal abuse, is enough to apply for a restraining order and file for divorce?" I said. "I can help you contact a lawyer, and I'm sure Leo will support you." "Lily," Jessica's tears started flowing again. Why are you helping me? I used to be so." "Because we were both his victims," I said softly. "Besides, it's a doctor's duty to be compassionate." 3 days later, Mark was fully awake from the anesthesia. When I went to check on him, he was propped up in bed, looking at the sunlight outside with a complex expression. Jessica wasn't in the room. She had already taken the recording and the documents prepared by her lawyer to file for divorce. "The surgery was a success," I said, inspecting his wound. "If you recover well, you can be fitted for a new prosthesis in 2 months." Mark turned to look at me, his eyes filled with a vulnerability and confusion I had never seen before. Jessica left. My hands didn't stop moving. "I see. She said she wants a divorce." His voice trembled. "She said she's never coming back." I didn't respond, continuing to record his vital signs. "Lily," he suddenly grabbed my wrist. "I truly have nothing left now. Please just give me one chance, okay? I swear I'll. Mark, I pulled my hand away calmly. Have I ever told you how you treated me in that other life? When I needed you the most, you chose someone else. The color drained from his face. Now you know how I felt back then, I said, looking him straight in the eye. But that doesn't mean I'll repeat your mistakes. I have my own life, my career, and the people I care about. Leo, he said with a bitter smile. So it really is him. That's none of your business, I said, closing the chart. Get some rest. Your physical therapy starts tomorrow. As I walked out of the room, I let out a long sigh, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. The thrill of revenge? No. All I felt was a deep sense of release. The past life, at this moment, had finally come to a close. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Leo. Jessica told me everything. Thank you for your help. When are you free? I want to see you. I replied. Let's wait until Mark is discharged. I want to focus on finishing this treatment. A month later, Mark's wound had healed well, and he was ready to be transferred to a rehabilitation center. The divorce proceedings had also begun. Jessica was temporarily staying in the U.S., preparing to reapply for the graduate program she had to abandon. The day Mark was discharged, his parents came to pick him up. When his mother saw me, a flicker of embarrassment and shame crossed her face. Dr. Chun, she began hesitantly, thank you for healing my son. In the past. I shook my head. I was just doing what a doctor should do. As I turned to leave, I heard the clatter of something falling to the ground and Mark calling my name from behind, but I didn't look back. 2 weeks after Mark's discharge, Leo and I met at the coffee shop near our old high school. 10 years had passed, and Leo's demeanor was calmer and more mature, with a newfound firmness in his features. He wore a simple white shirt and dark trousers, and the eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses lit up when he saw me. Lily. He stood up to pull out my chair. You've lost weight. The life of a surgeon, I said with a smile as I sat down. How's Jessica? Much better, Leo said, pushing over the latte I had already ordered. She's preparing to reapply to the PhD program at MIT. The divorce went smoothly. The Liu family backed off once they heard those recordings. I nodded and took a small sip of coffee, letting the warm liquid slide down my throat. Thank you, Leo said suddenly. If it weren't for you, Jessica might have been trapped in that marriage for the rest of her life. I just did what I had to, I said, putting down my cup. So, how's your research at Harvard going? Leo's eyes instantly lit up, and he began to talk enthusiastically about his project, the application of gene editing technology in bone regeneration. As I listened, I couldn't help but smile. He was still the same Leo who could talk nonstop about medicine. Only now he was more confident and passionate. Actually, his tone suddenly shifted. I came back this time for another reason besides Jessica's situation. What is it? I asked curiously. He took a small box out of his pocket and pushed it in front of me. My heart began to race, and my fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside wasn't a ring, but a uniquely shaped pin, engraved with the words Harvard-MIT Health Sciences and Technology Program. I want to invite you to join my research team. Leo's voice was calm, but his eyes were blazing. Your clinical experience combined with my basic research could lead to groundbreaking work in bone regeneration. I picked up the pin. Sunlight streamed through the window, refracting into a rainbow of colors on its surface. Is this a job offer? More than that, Leo took a deep breath. It's also the start of me wanting to pursue you again. 10 years ago, you said we were too young. I think we're both mature enough now to know what we want. I looked at the man who had walked with me through the most important years of my reborn life. A wave of warmth spreading through my chest. I had never experienced a healthy love in my past life. In this one, Leo, in his own way, had taught me what respect, understanding, and support truly meant. I need to think about it, I finally said. My work is here. My patients need me. Of course, Leo nodded. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. When we left the coffee shop, the sun was setting, stretching our shadows long behind us. Leo's hand occasionally brushed against mine, warm and steady. Oh, by the way, he said, as if suddenly remembering. Next month is the school's anniversary. Ms. Lee invited us to come back and give a speech. Are you going? Yes, I answered without hesitation. I want to tell those kids that no matter what happens, you always have a chance to start over. A year later, Leo and I had a simple wedding in the United States. The night before, I received a text from an unknown number. Congratulations. I owe you an apology, and I owe you a thank you. Mark. I didn't reply, just quietly deleted the message. According to Jessica, Mark's father had passed away not long ago. To support his family, Mark had left the rehab center early. She didn't know what kind of work he was doing now, but I no longer cared. Whether his life was good or bad had nothing to do with me anymore. It was all his own doing. At the wedding, Leo placed a specially made ring on my finger. Engraved on the inside were the words, to heal, to love, to grow. I looked up at the man who was about to become my husband, my heart filled with a calm joy. We didn't exchange expensive diamond rings, but chose these special surgical steel ones, symbolizing both our profession and the strong, pure bond between us. 5 years later, on our high school's anniversary, Leo and I returned to give a speech, our 3-year-old twins in tow. The 2 kids sat in the front row, looking around curiously, while Leo and I stood at the podium, sharing our story. The most wonderful thing about life is, I said, looking at the young faces in the audience with a smile, that it's always full of infinite possibilities. No matter what setbacks you face, remember, the sun will still rise tomorrow, and you will always have the chance to start over. After the speech, a limping figure quietly left from the back of the auditorium. I didn't follow. I didn't even let my gaze linger. On the way home, Leo held a child in each arm. I walked beside him, the setting sun stretching our foreshadows long, merging them into one, pointing toward the horizon. The end.